In spite of all the changes Comiket had to undergo in order to adapt to the new normal we live in today, such as the huge restriction they had to put in place on the number of people who could attend the event itself was still as lively as it was before. Like, if you were there to walk through the event itself, you will notice that the huge crowds and the mosh pit flash walls of death from before are all more or less still there, unfortunately. That said, even though the number of people who could attend the event has been greatly reduced, that doesn't stop the event from actually having all the weird stuff that happened before still continue to happen here and there. So I figured I could talk you guys through and tell you guys about some of the ones that I found more interesting during this time's Comiket. So this first point I find to be rather important, particularly if you live outside of Japan. This could actually affect potentially the way that you're able to get tickets in the future, as well as the potential parity of the types of tickets that are being distributed to people living within Japan and outside of Japan. It's a rather big flaw with the way that the ticketing is done has been come to light recently. Although I'm surprised that it only took like 3 Comikets for it to come to light, but so what happened was that a Twitter user by the name of Geek1300, who lives in Takikawa, Hokkaido, which Hokkaido is in the northernmost part of Japan, he pointed out that for the tickets within Japan, in order to actually claim the tickets, you actually had to go to a Family Mart and print it out there. Problem is that Family Marts where he lived was so rare that he actually had to drive down about 250 kilometers to the nearest Family Mart, which on a normal day is about an hour's drive. Not too bad. I mean, it's kind of sucks, but it's not too bad. But what happened was that because of the fact that this is a winter Comiket and it takes place in in the middle of winter, especially since this year's winter was particularly cold, he had to drive through a snowstorm for 4 hours just to get to the Family Mart to get his ticket. So this thing is that he actually documented his entire trip through like pictures and the like that he took along the way as well, and just compiled all of it and put it up on Twitter to show his journey just to get his tickets. And this actually blew up in Japan particularly. I think the tweet itself got like 4.1 million views, since we can now view views on Twitter as well. And it actually got about 14,000 likes. So it was actually blowing up quite a bit, and even websites such as BuzzFeed Japan, which, yeah, apparently BuzzFeed still exists there. Apparently even they were picking up on the event and were like reporting on it. So it blew up quite a bit, and this might actually potentially pressure the committee to, in the future, swap the way that they do deal with the tickets. And if they go with the suggestions that were being pushed during this whole debacle, we might see future online ticket like printing, which also might then lead to hopefully a cascade into allowing the people living overseas, by virtue of the fact that the tickets are now easier to claim, to also get access to the earlier tickets, which up till now are still not really available to the people who come in from overseas. For those of you who didn't know, if you are coming in from overseas, you're only able to purchase tickets after like 2 batches of balloting within Japan are already done. So that sets people quite far back in the waiting list. So I understand that this didn't exactly take place during the event itself, but in the days leading up to Comiket, this was a very important event, and it might actually affect how future Comikets might be organized. So I figured we might as well give it an honorary mention, since this is actually quite important overall. Though moving on to events that did happen during Comiket itself, well, the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that many circles as well as companies have been testing out digital queue systems that they could use during the event to basically prevent the long queue lines that would usually occur in front of booths, which take up a lot of space and cause a lot of confusion, especially in this new normal that we live in, where people don't really want to crowd and squeeze as much as before. So you see a lot of companies as well as certain circles try it out. For the most part, you see it slowly being figured out, but you still see quite a few blunders as well. Like one very big one that happened was one doujin circle called Chocolate Shop. They tried to implement this system as well. Only problem is that they took them so long to like figure out how to give people the electric tickets and digital tickets, as well as to check those tickets, that they actually ended up taking up so much time that the queues to get the digital tickets checked out ended up being as long as your normal queue instead. So the whole system didn't really work out for them, and the server ended up crashing altogether, so they had to dump the entire system and get everyone to requeue, which, yeah, it's like, just hearing about it puts a little pain here. But unfortunately that happened, but hopefully we might see in the future, as circles as well as companies figure this out better, that we might see this being used more, and this might actually lead to a even better and more carefree experience, as people no longer have to queue for like an hour in front of a booth and can instead get a queue number go walk around the rest of the event and come back an hour later, which might make it more peaceful. This is probably going to take a while to see how the logistics will play out in the future, but it was an important point to take note of, I feel, as well. So the next few points I want to talk about are more corporate booth related, but I found all of this to be quite interesting as well due to the fact that they were all related to the games as well as IPs that were actually quite talked about this year, whether for better or for worse. So the first one is the fact that Yostar, the one that made Astral Lane as well as is publishing many other games such as Blue Archive and Arknights. This is probably the first Comiket I think where they actually went about selling goods instead of just doing like a big flex, like we show you our car booth sort of thing. So the thing is that usually when Yostar attends this event, and I could be wrong, but for every single time that I've gone for Comiket and that I've seen their booth, they have always been not selling anything at all. So no corporate like official goods or anything, but instead they will set up a booth where they just have like thematically designed cars for whatever series they wanted to show off at that time. So I think like in 2020, in one of the Comikets that was only well available for people within Japan to visit, they actually had a car which was like Azure Lane themed. Then in the previous Comiket C100, they actually had a Blue Archive themed car. Although this time, instead of anything grandiose like that, they actually just had a booth selling goods instead, which was quite a big shift from their trend of usually feeling like they were flexing their wealth to actually trying to earn a profit from the event instead. Now, whether this is a sign of them actually like not be doing as well or not, is hard to say. It could very well just be that by virtue of the fact that they now have more IPs than they had back then, and these IPs were more successful. Plus, they knew that a global community would be visiting the event and therefore they could earn even more. It's hard to say. Like, we have no way to know for sure. But what we do know is that they've actually stopped bringing that car this time. Whether or not they'll bring it back next time is still up for speculation. But part of me just hopes that they actually bring that back instead of selling goods, because those were actually pretty cool to see as well. As I wait to see how grand they would like try to play up the event rather than to just use it as a way to earn a quick buck. Well, that said, I did go to the booth and stuff there ain't cheap at all, that's for sure. But hey, it's all worth it in the end, I feel. So the next point I want to talk about is the fact that also during the event, a lot of goods for the very popular anime from winter of 2022, from just last month during December of 2022, the anime for Bocchi the Rock, which actually hit quite well and was quite a big success. I have to say, like, I watched it and I was like pleasantly very, very pleased with the anime as well. As someone who initially read the manga, I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was. So props to the animation studio for actually making it both so weird as well as putting in so much effort into some of the animation here and there. But that aside, fanboying aside, yeah, the event itself actually saw quite a few booths that actually had goods for Bocchi the Rock. The only problem is that, like, in this probably you would have seen as well with the original sales of the music DVDs and the goods that were actually set up for those, is that most companies probably did not expect Bocchi the Rock to be as successful as it was either. Like, the goods that were there were painfully generic as well. Not just during Comiket, but even the ones that were sold like with the first order of the most of the CDs and all that. And even then, it's like, in spite of the fact that the goods were so painfully generic more often than not, everything sold out. Like, even before Comiket, the signs were there. Like, everything Bocchi related was just like slowly but surely being like disappeared from the market because everyone was just buying everything out. Sure enough, day one of Comiket, I got into the corporate booths around like 11, and I think I only like managed to look for goods related to Bocchi at around 12 p.m. or later. And by that point, everything was sold out. Like, even Cospa, which is more of the generic normie weeb brand for like goods, because they tend to like make very, well, not exactly bad, but more simple and generic stuff. Even they had actually completely sold out. So yeah, the popularity of the series was just crazy, I have to say. Then going on to the third point, which is the new game that released sometime a few months ago, Nikkei, on mobile. I'm sure most of you might have heard of it at the very least. It's the game with the very huge plot. So that game as well, the people who actually made the game, they actually set up a booth for the game in Comiket as well. And the booth was for the most part not selling anything. I think there was a very big confusion about that among a lot of people. Like there were people in the queue with me as well who were like, they're hoping to get stuff, but for the most part, most stuff that you could get was actually random. So there was a very high chance that you would actually get nothing other than a paperback, since it was a lucky draw and not a goods sale on the spot. So for the most part, what they just had there was just a event where you had to do a certain task at the booth, and then if you did those, they would give you stuff which was semi-randomized. Problem was that like the amount of things they had set up, maybe it might have just been that they didn't expect the level of popularity that the game would have, but the stuff that they had set up was for the most part so time consuming that in the end I think like around 1 p.m. because I was at the queue near the very end as well, where I think it was around like 1 p.m. where they actually had to completely cut the people from queuing for the booth and just had to just allow the people who had already queued to just finish the activity, and then they could like close up shop for the day. So apparently that was a thing, yeah. Like the amount of popularity the series received was would it be considered unexpected? I feel like it might very well have been like expected. I don't know. With the type of content it had, maybe not. It's hard for me to say. I don't want to be the one to judge the Kings with stuff like this, but for the most part, quite a resounding success for them. They set up a booth mostly for marketing, and the marketing seems to have pulled off quite well, considering the fact that on both days, the activities were just so full of people who wanted to participate that I think that from start to end, they actually managed to have people running through it. Although from the looks of it, and when I was in the queue as well, it seems like the staff were quite annoyed due to the fact that they actually set up 3 separate activities for people to do. The only problem was that it wasn't really very well explained on Twitter in the instructions what they wanted people to do. So a lot of people only got to the front of the booth and then started doing everything. So the person there kind of had to like explain to each person over and over again, like, do this, then do this, then do this, and like you could tell from the frustration in their voice that they probably had to have like done that for hours to every single person down the way. So yeah, props to the staff. Although it really feels like it could have been a bit better managed. Maybe then they could have had more people there. And so the last corporate booth I want to talk about is for a game that was rather polarizing this year. Like there were a lot of opposing viewpoints about what people thought about the game. I'm not gonna give my own opinion here since it isn't really relevant to this video, but the game I'm talking about is Tower of Fantasy. Yes, the game is still around. And I mean, truth be told, are any of us really surprised? I mean, if you think about it, it's a gacha game. And it was a game that had a decent level of reception when it first came out, so there was a very high possibility that it would actually get enough fans to earn enough money to tide itself over. Personally, what I found more surprising was the fact that they are actually willing to get a booth at Comiket itself. Because you have to understand, and this is like something I found out talking to a friend who worked for a company which actually had to rent a booth in Comiket in the past, and so they actually got the quotations back in 2019 thereabout. And if I'm not mistaken, for a small size booth, which was what Tower of Fantasy had during this event, it would have cost about 5,000 USD thereabout. So exchange rate, things could always vary. But 650,000 yen is a lot of money. Like in general, it's not a lot to a company that is super rich, but even then, it's money that you wouldn't want to throw and just burn for no reason. So it's like a company that would want to do this at Comiket, right? You would think that either they had a very strong belief that they were popular enough to sell, or this was part of a very expensive marketing gimmick to get even more clout or something like that, right? So when you think about it, like the fact that they were even there spending $5,000 on a booth, and this is before including all other like operational costs that a company would incur trying to do this, like the amount of paperwork that had to be done is also quite massive. Like you had to make sure that you had like the approval to use the car park. You're gonna give them plans on how you would load and unload everything, your sales projections, your emergency preparation. Like if an emergency happened during the event, how would you deal with it? How you would kill people? How you would kill them if the queue was so long that you couldn't fit people into the hall? Like everything had to be done through paperwork and then submitted to the organization committee. So there's a lot of manpower going into, on like paid man hours going into just like filling up paperwork. Then you have to deal with the fact that the merchandise needs to be prepared, all of the design of the booth, the everything that's needed to decorate the booth. All of this will actually have to be prepared as well. So there's a lot of things that are going into a booth that typically you don't want to just let burn for no reason. So how did it do is what people probably would have been more interested in, right? It's hard to say, but one thing's for sure, like I did see people purchase stuff from the booth. Like there was a small number of people carrying like the Tower of Fantasy like paper bags that they actually had as well. But most of the time when I walked past the booth, there was no queue in it, and the staff were actually standing at the front of the queue trying to like market the goods, like holding it up and like, "Hey, we got this, come here, buy this, buy," and stuff like that. But like they wouldn't actually go on and actually touch people, of course, but yeah, they were actually like rather aggressively trying to sell the goods at the front of their booth. Like at the furthest front they could stand without like getting in the way of the other booths. You had like multiple people standing there like trying to market this. So I can't tell if this is due to the fact that the staff are either like inexperienced with the event or not Japanese, like citizens in general. It's hard to tell. But the way that they were marketing it is not something very normal for Comiket. Like even booths with no queue typically wouldn't be going out there this aggressively. It feels a bit invasive, if anything, because I mean, like, you would expect something like this if you were to go to a bazaar, not like, I mean, the event itself is as crazily, like, full as one, but you would not see any other booths typically, like, going to the front and doing stuff like that. It feels a bit like poor etiquette, in my opinion, but it's hard to say for certain if everyone else would feel the same, since typically most booths don't do it, even with no one there. So it's like, the fact that they were going up in people's face trying to, like, get people to come and take a look felt a bit off to me. Though whether this is a sign that they didn't sell enough, hard to say. They could very well have made enough, they might not. But the fact that they were trying to push it this hard, maybe it could have been a marketing thing as well. It's hard to say, but the fact that they were even there in the first place was quite a surprise to me. That and the fact that they for the most part, seem to have a empty queue. It was both kind of sad to see, but at the same time, I don't know how to feel about the way they were trying to like get people in as well. So the last point I want to talk about, and this is probably the one that some people are maybe most people are here for, is the what happened with the mangaka for, or the manga artist for Mochi the Rock. So some of you might have already heard of what had happened, maybe, but basically what happened was that, for those of you who didn't know, is that she had actually applied for a booth at Comiket, not as a corporate booth, as a normal like individual drawing fan art or like your doujin like booth. And the thing is that she apparently, when they found out who she was and how popular she was, the organizing committee kind of panicked. Like they didn't know how to deal with it because and this might need a bit of explaining and context, but typically with Comiket, right, like the way that each hall for the doujin like fan created goods segment is set up is that like you have the full hall, and then like the most popular booths, like booths that they know would get very long queues and are highly popular, would be located along the walls, with the excessively like popular ones typically being located along the shutter sites around the building. Those are where the ones that are so popular that they feel that the queues won't fit in the building. Their queues are typically outside, and the reason why they are located at the shutter is because instead of facing inward, they will face outward from the shutter towards the outside of the building, where people could like queue in much greater numbers. So the thing is that like typically, even like a manga artist, right, if your manga is not excessively popular, you could very well get away with just getting a booth like inside at a random booth in the middle of the like interior of the hall, where the I wouldn't say the less popular ones are, or like the more normal, not crazily popular ones, I guess. So initially when she applied, and this has to do with the problems of the way the application process works. How it works is that like for Comiket, when you want to get one of these booths, you don't apply like a month or two before this Comiket happens. You will apply at the end of the previous Comiket. So she most likely had like during the end of C100, she had just like gone to the application area and submitted her application. And then from August till like now, during that period, they would have like looked through all the applications and then decided who to place where, right? So the thing is that the popularity of Bochi, the rock itself, was not something that would actually come to light until like pretty late and closer to the event's release. So probably around the time when they had already finalized the booths, this happened. Initially, no one realized. Apparently, it slipped through the double checks if there were any. So she actually like arrived at the location, like kind of in the the normal setup like participant area for those dojin booths. Then the organization committee apparently like panicked. They were like, "Oh shit, she's definitely not gonna like be a nobody this time around." Like the queues were expected to be very insane. So because they didn't have anywhere else to place her since this was so last minute, they instead placed her outside the hall. Like because like outside the hall there's like a bunch of like hallways and all that where it's still kind of sheltered, but it's like it's very obviously like on like road where cars could pass by and all that. She was apparently just set up outside over there on her own. Like apparently people were even calling it the birth of the real life Comiket Bochi as well. Like because of the fact that she was just like thrown there alone, isolated from the rest of the hall. Because it was like if you look at the picture as well, it's like she was quite isolated from the hall itself, and everyone else would be in the hall. So it was actually kind of sad, but it seems that they were right on the money with that one. Apparently, she was crazy popular. Like there were pictures online as well of like the queue for her booth. It's insanely long, and the thing is that yeah, I guess in the end they kind of made the right decision in like tossing her out. Although the fact that it even reached this point in the first place is it's kind of short-sighted on their end, I guess. I mean, they were probably too busy to actually have noticed it as well, since all of this exploded like pretty late. But yeah, once they noticed that she was actually located deep in the hall, they panicked and they just like all this happened. So yeah, can't really blame her for it. Like she probably did not know either. Like people who know how the application process works, you can't really blame her since at the time that she did it, the anime probably had not even aired yet, so she didn't even know that it would be like this level of popular until all this happened. And so, what? Were you expecting me to talk about the cosplayers? Ha! Ha ha! Ha ha! We won't be doing that here. Like, in terms of the cosplayers, there's already enough people talking about them in general. Like, if you guys are interested in like compilations of all the cosplays and interesting cosplays at the event, there are actually quite a lot of Japanese sources of like people compiling all of the ones they saw that were quite interesting. So you could probably if find one of those if you're interested in the cosplay site itself, or if looking for those is difficult, you could just let me know in the comments down below, or you could let me know on Twitch. I could actually just easily pass you guys some of the articles that were actually covering most of the cosplay specifically. Like the only problem is that like cosplay gets a lot of coverage at this event. Like they are like just blog after blog after like news fan websites just all dedicated to like compiling all of the Comiket cosplays. So that won't be hard to find. I could easily like if you guys are interested, I'll put like a tag comment in the video down below with all of the information there, like maybe linking to a few so you guys can go and read it as well. But yeah, it's no point in me like specifically covering it. Maybe the only ones I'll talk about were the ones I talked about in my earlier video as well, actually, where I talked about the important changes that occurred during this Comiket. If you're interested, you can find the video here, or I can just like you can just look at the pictures I'm gonna put up next here. You can just look at like these two, like the memes and more, and the very cool robot over there. I think there was a guy who dressed up as the Family Mart itself as well. The usual funny memes, I guess, that you get at every other Comiket. But yeah, in terms of cosplay, I'm not gonna hop on it too much. Yeah, I guess this is all I wanted to share with you guys today. If you actually know of any more stuff that was quite interesting in the event, do let me know as well, because I'm trying my best to like keep up with like what else happened that I could have potentially missed as well. Like the thing with the event is that so much happens, and there's like so much that I needed to take note of, because I was running across all the booths the entire time for both days, from about like the time I entered all the way till like 3 p.m. So if you know of more, do let me know in the comments down below as well. So thank you all for watching. If you want, you can check out the other video. That one might also be important since it might provide information that might be important into the next Comiket. But either way, when it gets closer to the next one, I'll probably release a video just to like give people a heads up of like what changes to take note of. But until then, I'll probably be releasing like more other types of videos as well, like the gaming ones and all the gaming review ones about some of the very bad games in Japan that are quite hidden and unknown. Stuff like that and all that, maybe touring stuff. We'll see as it goes. But yeah, if you want to join and chill with me, you can go over to my Twitch channel. I typically stream on the weekends in Japan. Not this weekend though. Maybe next weekend onwards once again. Or if you want to ask more stuff, I could probably answer some of it as well. I've been going for Comiket for like 10 years at this point. I really feel so old when I say that. But yeah. Thank you all for watching. I'll be heading off now, so take care and bye-bye.